The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 92.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Picard called Broken Pieces. This is it the penultimate? I mean,
it's the anti-penult.
Okay, because this is the last episode before the two-part season finale.
Correct.
That's the way we're doing it. And joining me today, as you have heard, are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Joel Antrudam.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Very well, thank you. Folks, if you enjoy this podcast, please be sure to share it with your friends. Help us grow this community of listeners. People have a lot of more free time on their hands right now as we're releasing this episode, so maybe they'd like to take their mind off their troubles and listen to some fun discussion of Star Trek. As this season of Picard comes to an end, we have a lot of great stuff on tap immediately following. We've got some great discussions of classic Trek, some of the great movies. So please recommend to others. Keep listening. We're love to have you with us. All right, so let's start as we do at the beginning of this episode. We have another flashback, and this is standard now for the series. We're told the world is called Aya, and it's the grief world, and the events we see in this first scene take place 14 years previously, thus right before around the time of the synth attack on Mars, which we find out is right before the synth attack on Mars.
Yep.
We have 14 Romulan women standing in a circle in some kind of ritual about an ancient
around the dinner table of madness.
The dinner table.
Exactly.
That is a great. I wish I could come up with that for the title of the show.
Sure.
It's a ritual about an ancient civilization that used to be on this planet and left this warning, the admonition, I think they called it. And
yeah, I don't know that the ancient civilization was actually on this planet. As we find out during the course of the episode, this is planet's in a very unusual situation. The ancient race drug 8 stars together to form an octet and then put this planet in the middle of it all. So this is a highly artificial situation designed to call attention to this planet. It's like, go here and visit the dinner table of madness. It's like a giant Disneyland sign or something. And so what we're watching is a Zhat Vash initiation ceremony. Apparently, to get into the Zhat Vash, or at least their inner circle, you have to let yourself be exposed to this telepathic thing from the dinner table that will drive apparently 13 and a half of the 14 people it's exposed to mad. So like one and a half don't claw their faces off or bash their heads in with rocks or kill themselves.
Yeah. So this is this seems is
like
weird.
A kind of inefficient recruiting technique.
Right. So what we have is they're working to prevent the second coming of the destroyers. And this group includes Commodore O is the one initiating them all into this. But in the circle, including our Drusilla, Narek's sister, and the Romulan scientist, her name escapes me for the moment. I probably have Ramda, who had been assimilated by the Borg, and they all see this apocalyptic vision which is the same one that Agnes Jurati is shown by Commodore O. Apparently, it doesn't drive her insane; it just makes her homicidal.
I think that Agnes was shown an edited version of it, and she got it through a mind meld rather than from the dinner table itself. I think these people are having it much more force and detail.
Okay. So as you said, some of them kill themselves outright with a phaser to the head or bashing their face in on rocks. That was disturbing.
Yeah, the way that happened on camera is we saw it as a POV shot where you see this rock coming up to the camera and bashing it. Yeah,
yeah, that was. Meanwhile, Drusilla looks mildly disturbed. It's like, what's wrong with you, lady? So Drusilla is Narissa, and it turns out that Ramda, the Romulan scientist, is Narissa and Narek's aunt who raised them when they were orphaned. So we have this connection between them here. And Ramda apparently broke the Borg cube, the one that the Romulans have control of, with the force of her despair when she was assimilated. And that's how they captured it. So apparently the Borg are sort of ancillary to this whole thing, which is surprising.
Because there's partially synthetic life forms, I guess.
Yeah, but they weren't I think we all kind of assumed that the Borg were at the core, like the fact that the Borg are partially synthetic, that was at the core of Zhat Vash's plans for the cube and what was going on. But it turns out it's that, like, the Ramda wasn't intentionally sent to the cube.
No,
to be
it turns
assimilated.
out that the Borg, as Narissa says, they picked the wrong Tal Shiar ship to try to assimilate.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting twist in this story to kind of shunt the Borg cube off from being primary importance to sort of secondary importance. Meanwhile,
I don't know that it clashes with my expectations.
Okay.
I've always thought that the Zhat Vash were primarily zeroed in on data-like life forms as the real threat, and thus the Borg would always be kind of secondary to the plot.
Oh, okay. I guess I had thought that the Borg cube was more central, but yeah, that's. We had talked last time about where we sort of like we weren't sure where did Elnor find this Fenris Rangers pager that he had.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it was in Hugh's office. That's where he found it.
Okay.
And thus when 7 of 9 shows up to save the day, it's like, where's Hugh? Because it was Hugh's business card pager that called her. Right.
The delivery to person to person. So as we saw, the Tal Shiar have tracked down Elnor into this office, and he's trying to fight them off, but they've overpowered him until 7 comes along to save him, and he kills the rest of the Tal Shiar, and then he rushes to 7 and hugs her like a child.
And we have the hug of absolute candor. I love that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I thought that was
I'm being absolutely candid. Hug.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was they did something interesting with the character where it's like he is this weapon, like this co-op Malat weapon, but yet he's still kind of a child as well. He's a scared child.
Emotionally, he reacts like a child would when they find their parents after some kind of trauma or something that scares them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have
he also, because he's got absolute candor, he doesn't feel the need to be macho after the fight. He can show how he's really feeling.
That's true. That's true. So back on La Serena, Picard and Soji beam aboard from the Nepenthe, and Rios reacts very strangely to seeing Soji. He kind of freaks out a bit. And meanwhile, Picard contacts Starfleet, says, "Hey, we're going to Deep Space 12. That's the closest starbase." And Clancy, Admiral Clancy, says, "Okay, we'll meet you there with a squadron to go to this other planet."
After telling him to shut up.
Yeah, well, we're proceeding at slipstream warp speed here, Dom. There are a few things to note along the way in some of these events. So, when Soji beams up, Rios is very stunned, and he tells Picard, "I'll take you to Starbase 12." Picard asks him what's the nearest starbase, and he says 12, Deep Space 12. And he says, "I'll take you there, and then I quit."
Right.
So Rios quits. Also, when in this scene with Admiral Clancy, they're in Picard's holo study, and she's sitting there in hologram form talking to him. So we know we're close enough to Starfleet for live chat to work in real time. And we have this confrontation where he is just so sure that she is going to resist sending starships. that she eventually has to just shut him down, and she uses a word that on Battlestar Galactica would be the word frack.
Right.
But she's like, shut the frack up. I'm sending the ships already. Stop being so arrogant. Right. And it's a really great moment for Clancy because she's written to be an unsympathetic character, but she's also written to be partially sympathetic. And this is an instance where she is showing that, yes, I am a reasonable person. I will send you the ships.
Right. He tells her, he sort of does a I told you so to start the conversation, that the windmills turned out to be giants, which is a Don Quixote reference, which is that there really is a problem here. And so, yeah, she's sending the ships. Raffi is, meanwhile, suspicious of Soji, of course, and also tells Picard that Agnes is a Romulan spy. Of course, Picard rejects that. He doesn't believe her at first. And so
Raffi actually pulls a gun.
Right. Yes. And Picard stands between her and Agnes and says, if you're going to shoot her, you have to shoot me first.
Soji.
Sorry, Soji. Yeah.
Yeah, because so Raffi pulls a gun on Soji, and Picard stands between the two of them, and is and Raffi rightly points out that you don't have a good record bringing pretty young women on this ship. The last one turned out to be a homicidal killer. What about this one?
Right. We already have one adorable little homicidal double agent.
Yeah.
Yeah. She calls him a fool. Then Raffi, Picard, says, hey, she's on board, and that's that. Raffi had seen the images that the XB Romulans who were drawing when she was going through the cube's computer system to try to break the tractor lock. She had come up with these images that they were drawing, and she asked,
because you always put it's like hanging things on your fridge. You always put your mental patient artwork right next to your tractor beam navigation. It's like pinning something on the fridge. It seems irrelevant, but it's a touching tradition.
Right. Yes. It's a Romulan.
Well, it's always the most innocent thing that people use to get into a server. You want to get someone's password? You just kind of go through a picture that they've drawn.
Right.
No big deal.
So she asked the emergency navigational hologram, which all the holograms get a lot of work in this episode. And kudos to the actor for how well he did playing all these different characters.
And we meet a new one this time.
Which the
engineer?
Yeah, I want to save that for a second because I want to talk about him specifically. But the ENH, the navigation hologram, says, she asked,
call me Enoch.
Enoch, yes, and she asked him about these drawings, and he says, "Oh, it's an octenary star system, 8 stars, where with one planet with which have incredibly complex orbital mechanics in order for them to be balanced, and this is where Aya is, the planet we saw in the beginning." So, clue. And this is the Conclave of 8. So the Conclave of 8 turns out to be, Raffi understands, is not about a group of 8 people. It's about a grouping of 8 stars.
Well, it's interesting, too. They mentioned that ancient Romulan star charts showed this grouping of 8, which means we're going to come back to that. That's how they're going to find it eventually. But that modern star charts don't. Right.
It was sort of it's a legend about it.
Also, Enoch remembers that Soji's name from when Captain Rios met her before is Jana.
Right.
And that clashes with, her name is Soji Ashad. Enoch doesn't know what to think about that.
Right.
But despite that, he's so pleasant. And he is the most pleasant of the personalities. This is the navigator with the Irish accent,
right?
And Raffi leans over and kisses him on the forehead and says, "You're my favorite hologram." And it's like, me too. Enoch is my favorite of all of these holograms.
It's one thing I like that you see a lot of this episode is when the holograms are thinking. In other words, accessing the computer, their eyes will flash blue. For just like the irises will flash blue for just a second.
Right.
So they'll be talking, all of a sudden they'll kind of look off to space, they'll flash, and they'll look back at you. It's an effective way of showing that they're processing.
Right.
It's the equivalent of the Apple spinning beach ball. It's like he's frozen up for just a second.
Yeah, we first saw that on the archives when Picard went to the archives earlier this season. Back on the Borg cube, Seven and Elnor are in the Queen cell, and Seven takes control of the Borg cube and starts regeneration of it. Activates the regeneration,
we see these cool like triangular Borg metal lice working on the outside of the cube.
And Narissa says that she's going to kill all the drones in stasis and the XBs as well. And they plan to eject the drones that have not yet been extracted. They're going to eject them into space and then go around killing the XBs. That's as to kind of cleanse the cube.
Which we see her do to the point where she wrecks a gun.
Right, she burns out one of her phasers later on.
It's nice to see weapons malfunction, and we don't normally see that, but gun jams are a thing. They happen.
Right. That Romulan was not maintaining his weapon properly. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it needed to be oiled
with phaser oil. So on La Sirena, Soji and Picard talk about what it's like for Soji to realize that everything about her is a result of being programmed. She's still dealing with this idea of not being real, and he's trying to tell her, no, like I know Data. Data was my friend, and he was real, and you're real.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the big expository, tell me about Data. And so we have this ostensibly heartwarming thing about Data and exploring Picard's feelings about Data and Data's feelings about Picard. And Soji tells Picard that Data loved him and things like that. And all this is okay, but personally, I just... Data. I mean, Marsha.
Don't skip over that last line about Data loving him, though.
Yeah,
I think that's the first time that she was able to access Data's memories within her.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
And it seems like such a throwaway thing, but I think that's actually the first point where she realizes Data's memory are in her, and this is her telling her, "No, I remember that Data."
Yeah, she seems. Yeah, that was very significant.
I'm not sure if she fully knows that it's a memory she's accessing, but she may think she's deducing it from what Picard has said. But I think you're right. It is her accessing Data's memories in some way.
Because I agree with you that scene was kind of cute and everything, and it was interesting. But I think at that moment, it's just like, okay, she's actually tapping into these memories that are theorized to be there by Maddox.
And just before that, Picard says about Data, like Data's capacity for expressing and processing emotion was limited. I suppose we had that in common. And so, like, Picard is revealing something about himself of this. We've always known that he's reserved. He has a hard time expressing a deep emotion.
Well, we see that with children. We see that with his reaction towards children throughout much of TNG.
And his brother and Robert and with even Beverly Crusher.
And everybody.
Yeah, and everybody, really. Yeah, he's very reserved. So, it's a touching moment, and Picard is visibly moved here. So interesting here. And it sort of harkens back to when Riker and Troy's daughter was telling Soji, you can have Picard and Picard could have you. Like, you're both people who need someone else in their life. And I think this is Soji sort of reacting
exploring
to that. Yeah, maybe a little bit. She's still very distrustful of Picard and everything else. So it's
with good reason. I mean, right now her life was literally turned up on its head. I mean,
yes. Meanwhile, Rafi's running around looking for Rios and encountering all the different holograms. And of course, as Jimmy mentioned, the emergency engineering hologram has to be Scottish.
Yep, Ian.
And he calls her Lassie, and she says, "Don't call me Lassie." And through him and the others, Rafi determines that an octenary star system would have had to have been built by someone wanting to leave an unmissable warning, which apparently we've all missed up till now, except the Romulans.
Yeah, well, obviously it's within Romulan territory, and that's why no one knows about it. It was interesting though. They talk about how there were 7 star systems that were natural.
Yeah,
but 8 for whatever reason couldn't happen.
Right. And this is something that it kind of bugs me a little bit. So when they show us the conclave of 8 stars, they're not in a pattern that's obvious. because there is a gravitationally stable pattern where you can have heavier and lighter bodies orbiting in a regular pattern around a barycenter. It's called a Klemperer rosette. And you can have 3 or more masses that are all orbiting this common center. If, for example, if you've read Larry Niven's Fleet of Worlds, the Fleet of Worlds is like, depending on when you're reading it, either 5, 3, or 6 planets that have been drug into this formation. And it does need to be artificial because you would never have this occurring by itself in nature. But it wouldn't, it would look like a big ring, just a ring of 8 stars. And then you could put a planet at the barycenter in the middle. You wouldn't need this weird configuration that we see, and a ring would attract with a planet at the center would attract much more attention than what we actually see.
Right. And it's, and then raises the question, which we could address now or later, but the question of who in Star Trek had the ability to do this. Because I think we find out that it's the people that were destroyed, the civilization that was destroyed, did this. So they couldn't have been completely destroyed, but that was subject to this cleansing. We could probably
have been like the last survivors of the civilization, kind of their last effort before they completely collapsed.
I've seen fan speculation that it was the Iconians, because they established that this all happened 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. And that's the approximate period when the Iconian civilization was a big one.
Right.
And they had technology that would let you like project from one planet to another and, basically beam across interstellar distances and other, really cool stuff you could get at Best Buy.
And it's the right part of space too, because I remember the Iconian episodes were close to Romulan space.
Right. It's true. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that's what it turns out to this civilization would have been. It'll be curious to see that. Meanwhile, the Mr. Hospitality, he's the hospitality program with the American accent, tells Rafi as she goes to her quarters and wants to get something to drink, and it turns out she's turned off her ability to get any alcohol out of the system, including
and not just as she locked out the ability to get alcohol, she locked out the override and the meta override.
Right.
Yeah.
Apparently there's no meta override either.
Yeah.
And then forgot about it. So apparently she was blitzed when she gave this order.
Right.
That's because otherwise you wouldn't forget. If you were sober when you gave the order, you'd remember it. But one of the things I love now, Mr. Hospitality is telling her about how, yes, when he bought the ship, he used the self-scan option for all of us holograms, and he claims he did it by accident, but he's never bothered to undo it. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we're all standard installs based on him, except he's made some deletions. And apparently one of the things that he deleted for Mr. Hospitality is any sense of personal space, because Mr. Hospitality more than once in this scene, despite being a hospitality program, is like totally invading Rafi's personal space, and she's bending over backwards to avoid it.
That's right. One of the things he tells her is that Rios needs a confidant that who he can't dismiss with a command to dismiss a hologram. Meanwhile, we see Rios. He's now in his quarters. He has not turned off the alcohol dispensing functions of his replicator because he's getting blitzed. Nope. And he has all kinds of paper books on philosophy, including, I noticed, one titled Surak and Existentialism, which looks like light reading.
Well, it's looking at the list of philosophers he has listed there, and it's Spanos and Kierkegaard and Camus. And I'm like, boy, dude, you need to find better philosophers.
Yeah,
find ones that aren't so depressing.
Yeah. He's also listening to sad music on a record player. So even in the 24th century, they have rediscovered the superior sound of vinyl.
Yes, although Raffi calls it a Walkman.
Well, I know. I was going to.
Sorry.
When Raffi comes in, she says, "Oh, was that Captain so and so's Walkman?" Yeah, which is a nice thing. Roughly same century, wrong device, but same century for the equivalent function.
It's Billie Holiday, by the way.
What?
He's listening to Billie Holiday for those who might be wondering.
Yeah. and he is also keeping stuff in a cigar box.
Yep.
And this is a nice thing because this was commonly done back in the day. People would smoke cigars and then they'd have these nice boxes they came in and they would use them to store stuff. And I remember having stuff in a cigar box as a kid, and it was a very common thing. They were very handy to store stuff in. And so he's doing that, and he's got these mementos from his time in Starfleet in there when he served as the first officer on the Ibn Majid under Captain Alonzo Vandermeer. He's got like his old comm badge. He's got his rank pips, which are magnets stuck to a piece of metal. And he's got a big collection of rank pips. I guess in case you lose one day, you need some backups. He's got like a crystal, and who knows what the significance of that is, but he's just got a lot of these personal knickknacks from that time.
Well, it's interesting too, and I was thinking about this. That's one thing that's kind of been throughout this is how much these physical possessions matter. I mean, everything can be replicated. They could replicate everything that's in that box, but the physical possessions still matter. We saw that with Soji, where she went through all of her journals and pictures and all that, and that was all faked, but it was still physical possessions that she had, physical pictures, know, and it's kind of interesting because, with pictures, how many of us actually print out, go to the store and get real print pictures anymore?
Yeah, that's so 20th century.
It's so funny though. I mean, it's interesting kind of this connection they're making though to that those physical things still matter, even though that they can be. She can have 500 copies of a picture made in about 2 seconds.
In a world where everything can be replicated on command, anything can be replicated on command, the getting something that's original, authentic, and holding on to it probably means even more than it does for us now.
Like that uniform, like the pips, like those are probably like the pips that were put on his collar when he increased in rank.
Right.
It's like, here's my ensign pip, here's my lieutenant pip, here pips, things like that.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea. Well, one of the things in this locker, his old Starfleet locker in the cigar box, is a drawing of himself and this Jana, who looks exactly like Soji because she's exactly like Soji. And so we get this clue that there's something that Rios encountered one of these Data daughter androids at some point.
The implication is he was romantic with her. But I mean, otherwise, why do you have a hand-drawn sketch of you and somebody else and just you two?
Well, there's the implication.
He's also really he's really emotional over all this, and he gets between the sheets easily is the impression we get. I mean, he's already been doing stuff with Agnes. And so I mean, the immediate vibe I got is there's a romantic history here. But then they do stuff that would, like, how did he have time to fall in love with somebody?
Right. It turns out he didn't. Yeah. Yeah. It's really weird that they set that up that way. But I think it's because of the other emotional impact of it. We'll get into that. But in the meantime, Rafi brings all 5 emergency holograms together in the holodeck version of Picard's study to find out what they all know.
They're like planning an intervention with Rios.
She notices that each hologram has a little bit different story of Rios's life. Parts have been deleted, but other parts haven't. So she figured this was a way that she could kind of get the whole story out, and we get quite a bit of it actually.
Yeah, we find out.
And she obviously, or Rios, forgets the power of networking, because if you don't have to have just one of your holograms forget a fact. You could say core database delete and all of them will forget that fact. But apparently he didn't do that.
He probably was a little too much of the alcohol when he did the deletions. Yeah. Why the hospitality coordinator can't boil tea.
I did skip over quickly to go back for a second. Back on the old Borg cube, Seven and Elnor are consulting the Borg systems, and Elnor suggests waking up all the drones to help them take back the cube from the Romulans. And Seven knows not only are they useless without the Borg collective, she could set up a localized collective, but she knows that waking them up and sending them against the Romulan troops wouldn't be just killing them; it would be assimilating them.
And we have this nice moral discussion of, is it right? And he's like, well, you could release them when we're done. And it's like, A, that doesn't make it right to do it even temporarily. And B, I might not want to release them.
Right.
And so this is really setting up for some drama. Seven is going to be facing her biggest fear, which is assimilation.
Right.
Because she's going to need to set up a LAN. She's not going to hook up to the Borg internet, but she is going to need to set up a LAN to run this cube.
Well, and it shows how, when they're in the collective, how attractive and seductive the collective really is.
Like a drug. Yeah. Both Picard and Seven have expressed that in the past, that how it's like a destructive drug for for your mind to be brought into the collective. Which is a lot like Odo and the Founders, if you think about it, how he talked about being in the Great Link. Very interesting parallels there. So Agnes, meanwhile, in the sick bay, regains consciousness in the presence of Picard. He now is, I think, convinced that she has done what she's done. He asks her why she did it. She tells him about Commodore O, and she said that she's had a psychic block preventing her from talking about it.
Right.
And he starts to assure her it's okay. I don't want to talk about it. I love that. Very forceful psychic block.
That's one thing I like, is they really showed that block kind of getting broken down, where she kind of reacts against it and fights against it, and eventually she's able to be open about it. But they played that well. They played it really well.
And she reveals that the vision that O forced on her makes her want to kill herself every single day. She's fighting against this impulse to suicide.
She dumped poison into her brain.
Yeah.
And now thoughts of suicide are how she comforts herself.
Right.
Which is really but she learned from the Vulcan mind lie that she got that 300,000 years ago, there was this civilization that built artificial life, and it went really ungoodly. And there was a robot holocaust, and they set up the Conclave of Eight to warn people, with the Dinner Table of Madness, to warn people that they should also not make synthetic life. Right. And that's what's driving the Zhat Vash to be so fanatical about this, because in order to get into the Zhat Vash, you have to go to the Dinner Table of Madness and get your own forceful mind dump of all this information. And that's why there's fanatics against against artificial life, because they've been submitting themselves to mental manipulation from this species that had a really bad experience with artificial life.
Well, and there's a threshold. There's a point where you can stop it up to this point, but once you hit that point, you go past that point, it's done for. And they're saying that, like, right now, with the Soong type androids coming back with Soji and company, they're at that threshold right now. The
Soji Asha Daj, the Soji Daj Gianna variants, which are indistinguishable from natural life, that's the beyond the threshold, apparently. Now, I want to ask a question there, because it seems to me what they said, and you can tell me if I'm off base here. What they said is not that those synths destroy you. It's that someone else is watching. This other species is out there watching, and when a civilization crosses that point, they come and destroy that civilization.
Yeah. They play it both ways. I think at this point they want it to be ambiguous, but they lay down clues that point in two different directions. One of them is that the artificial life itself goes crazy. And brings about the coming of Seb Sheneb, the destroyer, which is identified as Soji. So that would suggest it's the androids themselves that go crazy. But then they also compare it to, like, developing warp drive. When Zephyr and Cochrane developed warp drive, it got the attention of the Vulcans. And so they also talk about if the life gets up to a certain point and crosses this threshold, then someone really bad shows up. And so is that someone really bad at one of the androids? Is it another species? I think they want it to be deliberate.
You could very easily read it as, a Terminator type thing, where the androids develop to the point of, well, we don't need humans anymore, so let's wipe them out. Or you could, like you said, Jimmy, like they could be, there's somebody who's some bigger, badder enemy out there somewhere, whether or not they still exist 200, 300,000 years later, who's sitting there watching, and they've reached that point. No, we gotta kill them all.
Someone powerful enough to destroy an Iconian-like empire.
Yeah, which is frankly the more interesting option, because we've seen in sci-fi, robots go crazy and kill humans before.
Right. Yeah, I like that latter one.
In the background, Arnold was going, "I'll be back."
So Rafi,
otherwise, this is just Battlestar Galactica again.
Yes, and we don't need that. We already have Seven, who is a lot like what's the Battlestar Galactica, the blonde
6.
Yeah,
7 is like 6.
7 of 6.
Yeah.
So Rafi goes to Rios. She finds him in his quarters and goes in, and Rios tells her the story about Captain Vandermeer, how he used to think of him as a father figure and was surprised when he turned out to be a cold-blooded murderer, which is,
Rios has a bad habit of getting emotionally close to cold-blooded murderers. I mean, Captain Vandermeer, Agnes, he's a sucker for a cold-blooded face in sheep's clothing, I guess.
Right. So he tells her the story. There's the first contact where they met Jana and they representatives from
flower or something like.
Yeah, the representatives from a new species, and the ambassador was called Beautiful Flower, and the young aide Jana, who was Soji's sister. So they come in pairs. So there's got to be a fourth one out there at least, right?
Two more.
Well, no,
and I think we're going to see a lot more than just 2. I think we're going to see a lot more than just 2 next week. They make it sound like there's multiples. So
Beautiful Flower wasn't necessarily an android.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you saw that the drawing that he did, and it was almost photo perfect. I think that was on purpose to make it look like.
Jana did the drawing.
No. It was. They said the other drew Gianna and Rios.
Okay.
So it was that Beautiful Flower that drew it.
Okay, interesting. Maybe it has something to do with the orchids that Soji was seeing in her dream in her father's workshop.
Yeah, and the giant space orchids that are coming up off the planet in the preview for next week.
Well, there's that. Yep. So he tells them that they encountered these people. They came aboard the ship. They sat down to a meal, and then Vandermeer killed them both because he gotten a black flag directive from Starfleet that if it was disobeyed, the ship would have been destroyed with all hands. And so Vandermeer had no choice but to murder these people in cold blood, and that's when he killed himself because he couldn't bear the guilt of what he'd done. And Rios had to cover it up, letting everyone think Vandermeer killed himself for nothing. Killed the others and killed himself for nothing because he was super.
Well, not even killing the others; they completely wiped the fact the others existed.
Right.
Just killed himself for no reason.
Yeah.
And that led, not immediately, but within a short period of time, to Rios leaving Starfleet disillusioned.
Yes. Meanwhile, Agnes is talking to Soji in the sick bay, and
they're having a weird bonding scene,
right?
Where because even though she's got the mind poison that says this person is evil and they all need to die, she's also meeting the successful fruit of her entire career. Yeah. Which is thrilling for her, and she's
her scientific geekery is winning out over the mind poison.
Yeah, it's like, so what? Tell me about when you drink. Oh, I drink when I'm thirsty. You drink when you're thirsty. That is so beautiful.
And you're not perfect. You've got these little beauty marks on your cheek, and Data didn't have those beauty marks. And
right, she marvels at how perfect she is, and she says she's a work of art and a technological masterpiece. But Soji asks the important question, am I a person? Which is interesting. And Agnes says now that she's met Soji in person, she'd never do what O had told her to do before. Like, now that I've seen you and who you are. And Soji then says, I wouldn't give you the opportunity, which is good.
Yeah. I like how, actually, Soji says that first, I wouldn't give you the opportunity. And she says, now I wouldn't take it.
Right.
And I like how later she puts it to the rest of the crew. I'm done killing people, so that's good.
Right. But it's an interesting question. Is and it might be the question of this series: is Soji a person?
Of course, interesting. That goes back to that episode Measure of a Man, TNG episode Measure of a Man, where we met Bruce Maddox for the first time.
Yeah.
and it goes back to that.
I like when she asked the question, "Am I a person?" Agnes starts to think in philosophical terms, and like in Measure of a Man, and Soji cuts that off and refocuses her. No, am I a person to you right here, right now? Right. Yeah. No philosophical wondering. I need concrete and immediate response. I think when we do our wrap up episode next week of this, the final episode, I'm sorry, in 2 weeks,
3 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now.
Yep. We should discuss whether or not this question of whether Soji and the others are a person from our point of view. But I think that's the key of in this. So we switch back to the cube and we see that the drones are being killed by the Romulans, and so Seven jacks herself into the cube. She queens up. She becomes the local Borg queen of the cube, and this is her biggest fear. And it's a really dramatic moment. Now, already she's been manipulating the holographic, interface system, which, since it's Borg, it's all like green wireframes that she's waving her hands through. Right. Also, as she does this, we have this nice, cool green lightning in the happening in the queen cell, and we pan up and there's this big structure and it has a very Forbidden Planet like sense of massiveness. And so she's getting ready in case she has to queen up, and then it becomes clear this is the only way they're going to get out of here. So she finally does it, and once she's connected, the Romulans realize the cube's coming back online, and they space vent all of the Borg who are still assimilated, and we see these thousands of bodies flying into space, and Seven just screams, and it is like, wow, that is very dramatically effective. Yeah.
Well, you hear her activate the collective, and we are Borg. We are Borg. It echoes through the cube. Right,
and that's when the ejection happens. Back on Serena, Agnes apologizes to the other and promises to turn herself in at Deep Space 12. Rios, meanwhile, gets Soji her favorite snack of peppermint ice cream and French fries that he remembers from meeting Jana.
Fish fingers and custard is so much better.
Yeah.
So Rafi gives the background. 200,000 or 300,000 years ago, the warning was placed, the admonition that warned against creating synths, and when you do that, they evolve, and that doesn't go well. When you cross a particular line of evolution of synths, the destruction comes, the destroyer comes, and we talked about that in a second. So
by the way, this was kind of an effective scene, though, because each of them had their little pieces of the puzzle. And it kind of brought them together, Soji had part, and Raffi had part, and Picard had a little bit, and Agnes had quite a bit, and they were able to kind of connect it all into one puzzle piece, finally.
I guess we were wondering why we've all called each other here.
Right. So, and we find out that 40 years ago, when Data showed up in Starfleet, the Romulans sent in half Romulan, half Vulcan Bull O. So that answers that question about who she is. And her mandate is to stop the research into synths, and she created the attack on Mars.
So, and here's a question then. Did Romulans kill Soong?
Right. That's an interesting question.
I don't think they ever resolved during TNG what actually happened to him, other than he just disappeared.
Well, I mean, he did come back, and we met him, and he summoned Data, but Lore came too, and he died on screen, if I recall correctly.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember what. I remember he disappeared, but I couldn't remember what happened. So
that was when he gave Data the emotion chip.
Oh, right.
And we did encounter Soong's wife in robot form as well, and she was like Soji and Daj, almost indistinguishable from Riel. So that's interesting there. Then we find out that the Ibn Majid encountered the Ambassador of Beautiful Flower and Jana 9 years ago. So after the synth attack, but 9 years ago.
It just sounds like a late 1960s cartoon. Tune in next week for the adventures of Beautiful Flower and Jana.
Yeah, it's interesting that we have these real names like Jana and Soji, and then we have this eponym, of Beautiful Flower. It's kind of interesting.
And I wonder if we're going to meet his. I'm assuming her twin, and there'll be some native, like Native American appearance or something like that, where that name might be appropriate. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe this is a phenomenon. I mean, as a linguist, this is a phenomenon that is actually common in other languages. Here in English, most of our names are so old that the language has drifted from their roots and we don't realize what they mean. But in many languages, you know what your name means. Yeah. I have a friend from Iraq, for example. His name is Samar, which means joyful. And so it's like, yeah, his parents knew full well they were naming him Joyful when he was born.
Right.
Dom, your name, means it. I'd have to think through it exactly,
Lord.
But it's a variant of Lord.
Lord. You can bow.
I don't know if the Alminico part, but it's going to be something about Lord. My name, Jimmy, is derived from the Hebrew Yaakov, which means heel catcher. Which is an idiom for a supplanter, and Corey means I have no clue. So
yeah, that's exactly what my name means. My name means it sounded like a good name to have.
Yeah.
I have no clue what Corey means.
Well, my last name, Stika, is actually from the Czech Zika, which means peaceful.
Oh, okay.
But of course, you talk about that though. But I mentioned Native American. A lot of what we now consider Native American last names, like I had a couple of classmates who were Buck Elk.
Yeah.
But that would have been their name.
Right.
Way back when, Sitting Bull, that was his name. And of course, in the native tongue, but that was his name.
Sitting Bull is a little more macho than Beautiful Flower.
Yeah.
But you get the idea though, because there's other, names like that too. So, I mean, that's something that kind of does carry over into Native American names, at least their last names are like that as well.
Yep. So at this point, Soji takes over La Serena. She erects a force field, starts doing all kinds of stuff, and tells them she's heading for a Borg transwarp node so they can get to her planet of origin faster. But Rios takes it back with a failsafe that consists of the Spanish lullaby his mother used to sing to him, which was kind of fun. Picard sits down in the captain's chair, tries to take command, and realizes he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah,
it's definitely not like commanding the Enterprise.
okay, Boomer. And Soji convinces Rios to take them where they need to go, and he does. On the cube, the XBs manage to overpower Narissa, but she's beamed off to a waiting Romulan ship just in time. And Seven is Borging those XBs. So apparently not enough of their. I mean, to me, I wouldn't have worried about taking off their arms and stuff first. I would get out the thing that lets them be controlled. Right.
But apparently they didn't take that out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. So she gets away, and Seven disconnects herself from the collective because Annika has more to do. So very interesting.
Oh, there's a great moment there where they've won, and she's like, "The cube is ours again," and Elrond is like, "Oh, great. Are you going to assimilate me now?" And it's like, Annika has work to do.
Yes.
And she delinks Seven.
Picard and Rios then have this moment on the bridge of the La Serena where they're alone. He tells Rios his memory of standing night watch on his first ship, the Reliant, which is obviously not the Reliant of Wrath of Khan, but a ship named after it. And that he knew Captain Vandermeer slightly. He says Vandermeer was one of the best, of course, and Rios and Vandermeer was the first officer to Picard's old classmate, Marta Bataniades, who we saw in the TNG episode Tapestry, the episode where Picard relives the time where he got his artificial heart. She was his love interest at the Academy, if you remember, the Dark Hero. So they apparently remain friends.
Her slightly.
Yes. And so Rio says he hates that Vandermeer died thinking it was really Starfleet that had betrayed him and not the Romulan secret agents. And Picard said, Starfleet had betrayed themselves with the synth ban itself by giving way to fear. And Rios wonders if Soji is the destroyer that she says she is in all. So there's still some uncertainty here. So as they get to the transwarp conduit, ready to jump through, we hear a bit. I noticed that we hear a bit of the Discovery theme here.
Just a couple of measures of it.
Yep. And then we get the Picard theme, and then we get the Alexander Courage original series theme.
Yep. As the compass points home, the compass finally works, pointing home.
I thought that was so irrelevant. I mean, they've told us on screen this thing doesn't work, so why do I care if it's pointing towards the warp conduit?
Well, it didn't work because it wasn't where it needed to be, symbolically.
This isn't a fantasy series. This is a science fiction, not science fairy tale. I mean, it is pretty science fantasy, but it is not science fairy tale.
Right.
So I thought that was just too on the nose and didn't like it. But in addition to getting all of these musical callbacks as they're about to go into the corridor, we also get to see that they're being followed into the corridor by a rogue Romulan ship that presumably has Derek on it.
Yes, Narek is following him to the... Well, because we have to have that final confrontation between Narek and Soji, where she beats the heck out of him into a pulp.
Or something.
Yep. Or something along those lines. Yes, he's going to pay for his betrayal. That's where we end the episode, and we take up with the previews for next time. For it's called in Latin, "Et in Arcadia ego," which is
sure, okay.
Let go of my ego.
I too have been in Arcadia.
Okay.
Arcadia is a peaceful land in like Greece.
Oh, okay.
This was a saying. There are paintings named this, and yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how that bears out. Apparently, this is an idyllic world that they're heading to destroy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, final thoughts, Father Corey.
Just one thing. When Narissa, right before they space the Borg, Narissa calls the Tal Shiar officer Centurion, which is something that goes all the way back to TOS. So,
Jimmy.
So I liked how Ramda broke a cube with her despair from her Zhat Vash initiation. It's like what Hugh did, because when Hugh went back, he introduced unexpected, anomalous sense of freedom that caused questioning, and his cube disconnected from the collective too. So apparently, the Borg firewall isn't an antivirus program isn't strong enough to catch every problem, and individuals, when they get assimilated, can have ideas that are so strong the cube doesn't know how to deal with it, and it disconnects from the network for self-protection. So I liked that. I also liked we got names for almost all of the holograms in this. So Enoch is navigation, Ian is engineering, Emmett is the weapons guy that mostly speaks in Spanish, Mr. Hospitality, we know him. I don't think we have a name yet. If we do, I haven't caught it for the medical hologram.
Right.
Also, I have in my notes what happened to all of the non-Borg people who were on that cube, because they had all those officials, and scientists and technicians who were working there. Are they still on there? Did the Romulans evacuate them? Are they flying around with the XBs now? Who's in charge of this cube now that Seven's not queen? So I wondered about all that. I wondered why Rios didn't talk about knowing synths earlier, because he apparently knew the reason that Beautiful Flower and Jana needed to be killed.
I don't think he necessarily knew there were synths. I just think they knew that there was a black flag directive to kill.
Right.
Well,
I don't think he made the connection between them and synths until he saw Soji come on the ship.
Yeah,
that's possible, but he speculates. I mean, that is a possible interpretation that he has only just now made the connection. But there's a moment where Picard asks, "Did he know they were synths?" And he says, "I think he must have. That's the only way he could have killed them."
Right.
Well, the captain did, but that doesn't mean that.
No,
Rios
I understand.
did.
I understand. He may only be making this connection himself now, in hindsight.
Yeah.
But at the time, you could also read it as he's known, and he's been on this mission about sense.
Right.
I also don't know why he doesn't immediately, why he goes off to his quarters. I think this is part of the romantic thing, maybe, but it shouldn't be so strong emotionally after a brief encounter so many years later. You don't go off to you meet this dead woman who you now know is a synth because of the nature of your mission. You don't go off to your cabin and sulk and get drunk and not tell anybody. You immediately tell your employer what's happening, that I met a girl just like this however many years ago, and here's what happened.
But you're forgetting the connection with the captain as well.
Right.
You know, that was the stronger connection than with Jana. I didn't get the impression that anything romantic had actually happened with Jana, but that he was interested in her very strongly.
Right. Also, I still, this is the responsible thing to do.
Sure.
Is tell your employer that you have relevant information to the nature of the mission. And now you can, because it's a decidedly motley crew filled with alcoholics and dopers, you could excuse that, but that would be the rational thing to do, is what I'm pointing out. Also, speaking of rational things to do, get on Face Chat and tell Commodore Clancy, or tell Admiral Clancy about Commodore O.
Yeah.
and we're no longer heading to Deep Space Nine. We're going to get in this Borg corridor and go directly to the planet so that we won't be at that rendezvous.
Right. You wonder if he, I mean, it could be they don't want to tip off O by sending a message, I suppose. You could headcanon that. But yeah, they should have contacted Clancy, said, hey, we're not going to DS-12. We're going right to the planet. By the way, you ought to do something about O. She's a problem. And whether she believes you or not, at least you've raised the suspicion and you could start doing things there. You're right. That would have made sense.
Those are my thoughts.
All right. Great. So let's take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Star Trek, including Samuel O., no relation, David R., Cyprian C., Esther R., and Ron B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What do you think of this episode called Broken Pieces? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing that next episode, Et in Arcadia Ego, Part 1, translates as Lego My Ego. Until then, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thank you, and Joe Untrue.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, fear is the great destroyer.